Shalom Aleichem and welcome back everyone. As Baruch Hashem, we continue to learn from the Parshas of how to better our lives and how to better understand the world around us. In this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayera, we know the famous story. Avraham Avinu just had a Brit Milah. It's his third day after the Brit Milah, the day that he's in most pain. And it says, Vayera ilav Hashem be'elunei mamrei. V'yoshev petach ha'ol kechom hayom, v'yisa einav vayar. And he raised his eyes and he saw. And what did he see? V'hinei shelosha anashim nitzavim alav. And he sees that there were three people standing before him. So the pasuk says, "Vayisa einav vayar." He raised his eyes and he saw the three people. And then the pasuk says again, "Vayar vayarotz liklotam." He saw and he ran after them. You just told me he saw three people, and the pasuk says again he saw and he ran after them. Why have to say the same word twice? Vayar v'hinei shel anashim, vayar vayarotz liklotam. Just say it once. He saw them and he ran towards them. Why is the pasuk? Why does the Torah say that Avraham Avinu saw them twice?
Once first he saw, second time he wasn't sure if they come to him, so he wanted to make sure to get them in.
Okay, let's see what Rashi says. And Rashi says, take a look at the Rashi. Vayar, mahu vayar shnei pamim. So Rashi says, Harishon kimashma'o. The first one, like it means, he saw. He saw. V'hasheni, what's the second one? Lashon havana. He understood. Anyone can see. Anyone, Baruch Hashem, who's blessed with sight can see. But not everyone can see and understand what they're seeing. L'mashal, just to get a big picture idea. You can have a person who's sick, who has symptoms. Now, a trained medical professional can walk in and he can immediately spot all those symptoms and know what's really happening with this patient based on the presentation. Other people just walk in and I don't even know the guy's sick because they're not trained to see it. Right? They're seeing the guy. It's the same seeing. But one can see and understand, and one can see and not understand. And that was Avraham Avinu's special trait. Avraham Avinu didn't just see. He saw and he understood. And once you understand, you know what to do. Now Avraham comes and takes care of them. Because he understands what he sees. He understands that they need something. This is who Avraham Avinu is. He's what's called a Vayar person. A person who truly sees. Because we all see. We look down the street, we see people. We look here, we see people. But the question is, can we really see? Rav Smith here brings a statement from the Sefer Nefesh Chaim. Rav Chaim, Volozhiner's son, quotes what his father would often tell him. He would say as follows. Rav Chaim Volozhiner would tell his son, Ha'adam lo le'atzmo nivra, a person who is not created for himself, rak leho'il laharini, rather to help another person, b'cho asher yimasa b'chocho la'asot, as much as he can do with his power. That was Rav Chaim Volozhiner's musar to his son. You're not here for yourself. You're here to help somebody else as much as you can. This is Avraham Avinu. He sees someone, he understands it. There was once, Rav Smith says, there was once a guy, an older man waiting at a bus stop. And Rav Smith picks him up. And he tells Rav Zev Smith, he says, I've been waiting at this bus stop for over an hour and a half. So many Jewish people have passed by and nobody picked me up. It cannot be they didn't see me. So Rav Zev Smith tells this old man, he says, the truth is they probably saw you, but they didn't register that you needed a ride. They see it, but they don't see it. So this man says, to Rav Smith, he says, I wish I was a worm. And he quoted a pasuk, Va'anochi tola'ad v'lo ish. He says, I want to be a worm and not a person. So Rav Smith says, why do you want to be a worm? He says, I tell you why, because today, everybody's talking about the insects in the food. They're all looking with microscopes to find it. They all find the buggies. But me, they don't see. I wish I was a bug so people would see me. People feel this way. People feel that nobody's looking at them. Nobody sees them. Nobody knows them. We see a person who comes from out of town. Someone is a guest for our shul on Shabbat. Right? So there's two things you can see. A, you can see a person who's here for Shabbat. Or B, you can see somebody who's in unfamiliar surroundings. Maybe needs a little bit of an acknowledgement that he's here. Maybe he needs a little bit of a welcome to make him feel more welcomed here. Right? There's two things you can see. You can see the person, and you can see the real person. When Yosef HaTzadik, when he was in prison, comes two prisoners, the chief butler, the chief baker, and he says over there in the pasuk, Vayavo alahem Yosef baboker. Yosef came to them in the morning, Vayar otam v'hinam zo'afim, and he saw that they were depressed. They're in prison. Everybody's depressed in prison. Everybody's upset in prison. But Yosef HaTzadik is a Vayar person. He sees somebody, he knows how much more depressed they are today than they were yesterday. He realizes something is off. And that sets in motion a whole chain of events that leads to Yosef HaTzadik getting out of prison and becoming viceroy of Egypt. Why? Because he saw somebody. He said, what's up? What's wrong? Madua penechem ra'im hayom. Why is it so sad today? And what do we do when we see people? We do the American style. We try to ignore. You walk away. I didn't see anything. Right? Sometimes at work, people say something and then I overhear them. And they're like, Moshe, did you hear me? I'm like, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. Peace, shalom, al Yisrael. I don't know nothing. Nobody knows anything. Right? But the truth is, we're supposed to see things. We're supposed to be a Vayar person. We're supposed to see what's going on. Lo la'atzmo nivra. Yosef HaTzadik saw people did not look good and it bothered him. Imagine you come home and your spouse doesn't look good. Something looks up. Something's out of ordinary. The house doesn't look in order. Usually it's that much of a mess, but today it's more than a mess. So what's the one thing? You can see the mess and get all upset. Or you can see beyond the mess. Why did the mess happen? What happened today that was more problematic at home than it usually is? And then you can go up and do something about it. I remember when I was getting married, right just after getting engaged, and we had the kanchurim in my wife's where she was living at the time in Regal Park, and after the engagement party, we were driving home, and I drove my grandmother back home. I think my father came with his car, I came with my car, so I was driving my grandmother back home. She lived in Biwal, and she tells me, when you come home and you see the something's out of place, what do you know what to do? I said, sure, I'm going to tell my wife. She said, no, you're going to go and put it away. If something's out of place, you're going to go and do it. And I said, what do you mean? Why am I getting married? What do I have a wife for? She said, obviously, if it's not getting done, that means there's a reason why it's not getting done. That something happened. And that means you have to go and help out. It's a deeper way of looking at things. Not just to see the superficial, what's on the surface, but to see beyond that. To see beyond that. The Zohar HaKadosh in Parshat Tazria says a very phenomenal teaching. He says, Parshat Tazria is talking about the Halchot of Tzarat. He says, just as there's a punishment for one who says Lashon Hara, someone who speaks evil words, says the Zohar, there's also punishment for one who does not say kind words. Why is there a punishment for that? He says if we could say something nice, we should and must say it. This is the Zohar. The Zohar Kodesh says, if you see something nice, you have to say something. You have to be a nice person. A Jew is not just an observant person, an observant Jew. You see stuff. No. An observant Jew is someone who takes action and does something. We have to say something. We have to be people who recognize good and say thank you for the good. The Mishnah in Sanhedrin tells us a very interesting idea. It says, "B'sha'asha adam mitzte'er," when a Jew is suffering, and he's talking about the execution. We're talking about those who are getting skilaf. You remember this back in Memvav. So it said, "B'sha'asha adam mitzte'er shechina ma'omeret." When the person's about to get killed, what does the shechina say? Kalani miroshi, kalani mizro'i. My head is heavy. My arm is heavy. Hashem is in pain. We're about to kill a sinner. Someone is a sinner, a guy who's been established that he did wrong, and he has to be executed, capital punishment. Because Baruch Hu says he's in pain. Mishnah comments, "Im ken hamakom instead al damam shel rashaim shenishbach, kal v'chomer al damam shel tzadikim." How much more Hashem is in pain when He sees tzadikim in pain? It means if Hashem is noticing people's pains, even those who are deserving of pain, then how much more so we have to learn also from them. Just as Hashem is Rachum, we have to be Rachum. We have to learn from HaKadosh Baruch. We have to notice things. Moshe Rabbeinu grows up in the palace of a pharaoh. He's a prince of Egypt. He knows who he is. And so he goes and he wants to go see his brothers. And what does the pasuk say? Vayigdal Moshe vayetze elecha vayar b'sivlotam. And that made him the great leader that he was. He came to see. I want to notice it. I want to feel it. I want to be a part of it. Not just I live my life and they're there where they are where they are. I am where I am. No. He took a notice of what's going on. Vayar. This is Avraham Avinu, the midah of being able to see and understand what I'm seeing. Says Rav Zev Smith over here, a very important concept. He says nowadays, most of us, already 30s, 40s, middle-aged people, they call us, we're what's called a sandwich generation, 40s, 50s. Because we have our children to take care of, and at the same time, our parents also need our attention. And people start to say, he says over here, that how can I take care of everyone? I have my kids growing up, I have my grandkids, I have my parents, it's too much. So people try to skip out on certain things. He says, I can't take care of my parents, or I can't do this. It says over here, when he sees his parents, he should see all the time and effort they devoted to him and his needs. Right? We as parents never say to the kids, "I'll just let him stay, in his throw up or in his poop or whatever it is all night." We go over and you take care of them. They're crying. We take care of them. How could we as children not repay our parents? We cannot say you don't have any time for them and just ignore them and don't go see them. Rav Yaakov Galinsky, Zechatzidik Bracha, once saw Rav Shach in his late 90s running on the street. So Rav Yaakov Galinsky asked Rav Shach, "Why are you running?" So Rav Shach said, "I'm running because I have no koach to walk, so I run instead." Says Rav Yaakov, if you don't have koach to do something, so you have to run and do it faster. If at any point you think something that you need to do, you say you can't do it, get up and do it even quicker. Get up and run to do it. Because we are Vayar people. We have to capitalize on what we see and what needs to get done. There's a famous story, but it's always good to hear it again. The Bet HaLevi was once questioned. A question came to him a few days before Pesach. Someone came to the Bet HaLevi and asked him, "I don't have wine for Pesach. Can I use milk?" And the Bet HaLevi listened and said to him, "No, milk won't work. Let me help you with the wine." And he goes and he brings him a couple of $100 and gives it to him. So his family and his students asked him, why are you giving a couple $100? Wine doesn't cost that much. So the Beit HaLevi said, if he's asking to drink milk on Saturday night, that means he has no meat for the Su'udah either. And so not only I gave him money for the wine, I gave him money for the meat. You have to think. You have to see.
Read between the lines.
Yeah, you have to look between lines. You have to see what the question is really coming from. Right? You have to understand everything. I mean, this is a little bit different, but it's on the same type of idea. You have to read between the lines. They came once to the Havetz Chaim. They came before Pesach. They said we weren't able to bake a lot of matzot. We had a very limited amount of matzot. And the matzah bakery decided that they were going to give it to all the Gedolim, all the Tzdikim, all the Rabbanim, so they can have matzah for Seder night. And they wanted to get the haskama of the Chavetz Chaim, that this was a good idea. And the Havetz Chaim said, no, this is wrong. So who should we be giving it to? He says, give it to all the non-religious Jews. They say, what? And Chavetz Chaim says, well, it's very simple. The religious Jews, if you don't give them matzot, they're not going to eat hametz. But the non-religious Jews, if they don't have matzot, they're going to eat hametz. So you have to know how to see the question. You have to know what you see. You have to see it, and you have to see beyond it. And that's the koach of Avraham Avinu. And that's what we have to do, Rabotai. We cannot be happy with the surface. It says in Pasuk Mishpatim, Im kesef tavet ami, et ani imach. When you lend money to my people, to the poor man with you. What does this mean? Et ani imach, says Rashi. You have to look at yourself as if you yourself were the poor person. Right? Well, a lot of people like to do hesed. So what do? They look in the house, what they don't need, what's extra, what I can do without, and they give that as hesed. That's not hesed. That's decluttering the house. It's nice that you're giving it to nice people, but the real hesed is when you put yourself in their shoes and say, I would like this item, I would want to give that item to someone. That's how it's supposed to be done. That's how it's supposed to be done. When we look and we hear about someone's in pain, it has to be a te'ani imach. You have to be there with their pain. Right? We're talking about Chaim Shmulevitz says, those in America who say they feel what's going on to Israel are lying, he says. Because it's impossible to feel it because you're not there. Right? But our job is to try to be there. Is to try to understand it. You know, you're reading all the news. Shema, why we need to read the news? Well, one of the reasons we can say we're reading the news l'to'elet is to what? To be able to feel it. To have an hargasha of what it means to be in Eretz Yisrael. At the moment, rockets are being thrown into Elad, thrown into other communities. The person has to get that feeling. You hear about a shidduch crisis. Someone's having a hard time finding a shidduch. So we just hear about it. Okay, I sent it to him for him. I tried something. The point is Vayera. You have to really feel it. You have to really see it. And when you really see it and you really feel it, then obviously you're going to be more invested to get it done, to make it happen. This is the lesson of Avraham Avinu. This is the lesson of Yosef HaTzadik. This is the lesson of Moshe Rabbeinu. That we have to be there for others. We have to feel it. We have to be with it. So Rabotai, when we hear the news and we see the news and we hear what's going on in the world, even if it didn't happen to us, it happened to another fellow Jew, we have to feel it. I sometimes, for me, personally, it's hard to read all the news or watch all the videos because when you watch it and see it and read it, it has a big emotional scar. It's very hard to continue living normally. You come under a lot of pain. Okay, that is lesson number 1. Vayar, v'hinei shlosha anashim nitzavim elav, vayar, vayarotz likotam. Let's move on to another lesson, and I think that Kadosh Baruch Hu has helped me a lot on this lesson this week because I never really dealt with this lesson. This is a brand new one. And as I continued, I got a lot of sources that have just appeared to me on this topic. So we'll start with the topic, and we'll see where we can take it to. We're going to talk about Lot. Lot is a very interesting fellow. We know that Lot, Abraham Avinu's nephew, looks like Abraham, somewhat acts like Abraham, right? He's inviting guests. He's also Moser Nefesh to take these guests, right? He could be killed. And at the same time, Lot is a very big puzzle, right? He's wishy-washy. He wants to live in Sodom. He wants to amass a lot of wealth. He's ready to offer his daughters to be abused by the townsfolk. Later on, ends up having relations with his daughters and having children from him. So this guy is a very interesting fellow. You know, on one hand, he seems nice and seems good. On the other hand, he seems totally you can't figure him out. So we'll start with the Vihigadatum of Yaakov Galitsky. Yaakov Galitsky says, don't be so puzzled by the contradictions of Lot. Says of Yaakov Galitsky, there's a lot of other people with contradictions. He says Korach and all his followers, 250 heads of Sanhedrin, and Om Ben Pelet, they all join Korach. Om Ben Pelet comes home. His wife says, "What are you doing?" Right? She says, "You know what? I'm gonna take care of them." Korach's followers come. She uncovers her hair. They see her. She's not bitzniut. They say, such a bum, right? Such a disgusting guy, an irreligious Jew. He's a Chiloni. He can't be part of he's a friar. He can't be part of our holy rebellion against Moshe. So here we go. Here's a group who's going against Moshe and Aaron, and at the same time, Owen's wife uncovered her hair. He's out of the program. Right? Doesn't make any sense, but that's the way it is. In 2 weeks from now, we're going to meet Esav. Right? 2 weeks, hi Sarah, and then Toldot. Okay? So Esav, interesting fellow. Esav, we know, says he doesn't believe in Hashem. Right? He says he doesn't believe in Hashem. He doesn't want anything to do with part of it. He doesn't want anything to do with anything. He doesn't want the service. Doesn't want nothing. And then Yaakov takes the blessings, which is V'yiten Lacha Elohim. And Esav gets all upset. He doesn't believe in God, doesn't want to believe in God, doesn't want to do nothing. But the minute that the brachot go to Yaakov, which is a brachot that come from Hashem, from Yitzchak, he's all upset, he's ready to kill. This guy is also, he's here and he's there. Says Yerocham Levovitz. He says, this is not just Esav, this is not just Korach and his followers, this is not just Lot, it's everyone. Every single person, if he stops to analyze himself, will see how much contradictions he has in his life. Rav Yaakov Glinsky brings an amazing story. He says there was once a non-religious fellow, head of the, if I'm reading this right, Histadrut, what was that, an organization? So it's an organization of trade unions, like I guess a union organization, very anti-religious. There was an interreligious heretic guy there, and one day he went to the beach. He's on the beach in Tel Aviv, and he gets swept up into a whirlpool, and the waves take him. And the lifeguard on the beach runs into the water to save him, gets him back. And while he was saving him, he was hearing this Chiloni saying over and over again, "I'm not doing tshuva. I'm not doing teshuvah." So the lifeguard, when he brought him back and saved him, said, "What was that all about? Why were you screaming, you're not going to be chozeh b'teshuvah? Why were you saying that?" So the Chiloni says, "I'll tell you, I used to be a Hasidic Yid from the Slonim of Hasidim. And when I became anti-religious, my father said, do me a favor, for one last time, go see the Slonim Rebbe. And when I went to see the Slonim Rebbe said, listen, what can we do? You've chosen a different path. But I promise you, you're not going to die until you're chozeh b'teshuvah." So he said, I'm in the wool, in the waves, I'm about to die. I said, I'm not going to be chozeh b'teshuvah. This way, I know I'll live, because I'm only going to die after I'm chozeh b'teshuvah. So says Rav Yaakov, what is this guy? He's a ma'amin or he's not a ma'amin? What does he believe or he doesn't believe? Right?
He's what he needs to believe.
What he wants to believe.
says Rav Yaakov, says Yaakov Galinsky, says in the Chovat Levavot, they say a story. There was this man, a certain Parush. He renounced anything involving physicality. But before he was on that high level, he went from his hometown to another town to find parnasah, to find a job. And while he was there, he met a person who served Avodah Zarah. And this person said to him, this Avodah Zarah guy tells him, the idol worshiper tells him, what service do you do? He says, I don't do Avodah Zarah. I believe in Hashem. So this guy says, what's Hashem? Who's Hashem? What does he do? He says, Hashem. He's the almighty, all-powerful, all this. He gives everybody everything they need. He is in charge of the whole world. So this idol worshiper tells him, hold on a second. Hashem is in charge of everything. He gives everybody everything they need. So what?
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere. So why'd you come here? If Hashem can give you, your Hashem can give you everything you need, why'd you come to this city for parnasah? The man heard this, turned around, and left. Now, so this is the piece from the Haggadah to tell us that we all have contradictions. While I was looking at this, Hashem brought my attention to a piece in the Peninim al Torah that deals with why are people a contradiction. So now we know people have a lot of contradictions. So now the Peninim al Torah of Sheinbaum deals with why is Lot at this contradiction? Why is this enigma? Why is he this puzzle? Why can't he be one way or the other? Why is he stuck like this? So he says an interesting idea. He says, and he brings us from Yechezkel Levenstein, and he says that Lot grew up in front of Abraham and Sarah. And Lot got a lot of benefit from that. He learned from them Torah, he learned from them ethics, he learned from them how to do Ahnasat Urchim. And Lot possessed, he achieved and received a lot of good stuff from Abraham and Sarah. But at the same time, Lot always had midot ra'ot, negative character traits that he never fixed. So he says, it's true, when he was with Abraham and Sarah, he was able to hide them. He didn't want Abraham to find it. But the moment the chains were off, Lot reverted to his true self. Says Rav Yechezkel Levenstein, this applies to everyone. He says this, that you can have someone in yeshiva for years. Could be in yeshiva, could be in kollel. And then the minute he's out, he turns out to be this manuval. He turns out to be a disgusting person. Why? He says because the whole time he was in yeshiva, he never really fixed himself up. His midot ra'ot were still there. It was just covered up because he was in the yeshiva. And the minute he comes out, it all comes to the front. So Yechezkel Levenstein shares a very powerful mashal to explain what we're supposed to do to get rid of this midot ra'ot. So he says as follows: there was a Rav, a distinguished rabbi, came to visit a community. And it was a new community to him, and he wanted to get to know who this community was. So he saw the first person and he asked him, tell me, what's the mitzvah observance of this place? How do people keep mitzvot there? And the person told the rabbi, in this town, there's no thief, there's no murderer, everybody is good. The rabbi said, beautiful. Such a town. Wow. He meets another person, tells me, how are people's relationship between each other? Ben Adam Havero, one person to the... How is their relationship? And this man says, Rebbe, in this city, everybody loves one another. Ahavat hinam. We love everybody. Everybody's our friend. Nobody fights. No one picks up the fellow. No one would lie. Nothing. He meets a third guy. He says to him, how is the mitzvah observance of Shabbat, of Kashrut? of Tarat Mishpaha. And this man says, Rabbi, hello. We're such a nice community. No one fights, no one kills, no one lies. Why are you bothering us with this other mitzvot? Why you want to bog us down with Shabbat? Why you want to bog us down with kashrut? With Tarat Mishpaha? Why are you bothering us with this? We're such good people. We don't steal, we don't lie, we love each other. Leave us alone, Rabbi. Don't bother us with this nonsense. So the rabbi says, oh my gosh, they got the sur mira, stay away from evil part, but they didn't get aseh tov. They didn't do the to do good. So the rabbi said, I have to figure out a way to teach these people. And as he's walking down the street, he smells a very foul odor. He smells very bad. He looks and he sees a dead mule on the side of the road. He turns to his gabbai, he says, Gabbai, take this dead mule and wrap it up. Wrap it up in a cloak, in a black cloak. The gabbai takes it, smells so bad. He says, bring it to the Beit Midrash. And then he tells the gabbai, go out and tell everybody there's a mitzvah. Somebody died, there's no relatives to bury him. He said, big mitzvah, everyone has to come now for the funeral. People all jam-packed to Beit Midrash in the middle of the day. They closed all their businesses.
So they're doing another mitzvah.
So they come, and the Rav gets up and he says, I have to tell you, in this community, we just lost someone who never spoke Lashon Hara. We just lost somebody with such a big anav. He never answered back. Somebody who would get whipped and get hurt and wouldn't say anything. Somebody, you would put stuff on his head and he would carry it for you. We just lost such a tzaddik, such a great person. You have no idea the level of this individual. He never slept in a bed. His whole life, he laid on straw in a barn. Tzaddik. So the people were murmuring, who's this guy? Who's this tzaddik that died? No relatives. Who is this guy? We didn't even know he lived in our community. What a tzaddik. So they all said to Rabbi, who is this guy? Tell us his name. Who is he? The rabbi said, I'll do you one better. I'll show you him. And he takes the cloak off the dead mule. And they say, Rabbi, what a sketch, what a lie. You made us close our businesses about this mule. And the rabbi says, and what do you think you are? You said you don't do anything wrong. You said you're all nice people. No one fights. Nobody murders. Nobody. This is the mule does the same thing. It's not enough to be a mule. You got to do aseh tov. You got to do something too. You got to do the right thing. Because if you just stay away from the bed, then you're just a donkey. You're just a mule. Lot. Yeah. Possibly that he distanced himself for evil. But he never ever worked on his midot. He never did an aseh tov. He was sur mira. I'll learn from Abraham to stay away from things. But to actually do something, he didn't. The contradictions in us occur, says the Pinim Torah, because we're not ready to work on changing our negative traits to positive. So we'll do some nice things, but some things we don't, because we're not changing it. Based on this, Rabotai, I saw another amazing concept about Lot and about our inconsistencies. The Midrash Rabbah says, why was Lot saved? Why did Melachim save Lot? So everybody always thinks because he was Moshe Nefesh, he took them in, he could have died because of that. In fact, people came to his house and all that. Says in Midrash Rabbah, that's not why he was saved. Midrash Rabbah says, you know why he was saved? Because when Lot went down to Misraim with Avraham and Sarah, Avraham said, she's my sister. The only person who knew otherwise was the person who was traveling with them, Lot. And the Midrash Rabbah says that Lot was tempted to say, it's not Abraham's sister. It's my sister. But Lot fought himself and didn't answer. And says in Midrash Rabbah, because of this, he was saved. Because he kept quiet. Says in Midrash Rabbah. Says Rav Aaron Kotler, citing the Alter of Kelm, that even though Lot went through great lengths to be hospitable, and he put himself in danger, yet he only did this because he was imitating Avraham Avinu. It wasn't him himself. He learned of Abraham. It wasn't his action. Says Rav Aaron Kotler, on the other hand, Lot restraining from saying that Sarah is not Abraham's sister, that was his aseh tov. That was his action. That was his mitzvah. That led him to being saved.
But he saved Abraham. Not because he gave up the good stuff that he would have gotten from the king.
No.
For his sister.
Right, because he kept quiet and saved Abraham Avinu. That was his action. That was Lot. That's why he was saved. Says over here, the Midrash teaches us an important principle. Doing what comes naturally or subconsciously, imitating others, is not a merit for us at all in Olam Haba. The deeds that we actively pursue, the aseh tov, and internalize them, they're what gives us the real accomplishments. And he brings similarly what we were saying until now. Rav Shach points out, people make a mistake. They say, I'm learning in Kollel. I'm going to stay there as long as possible, so I'll get rewarded. Says Rav Shach, that's not true. What are you feeling when you're in Kollel? What are you doing when you're in Kollel? What's the action? What's the thought? Just being there is not enough. It has to be your life's mission. You have to feel it. You have to have a hergish of wanting to be there. To have a life of Kula Torah. That's the way you get reward for being in Kollel. That's the reward for any mitzvah. You have to want to be there. You have to want to do it. You have to be fully invested. You have to do it by aseh tov. Now, once I saw this, I saw another idea that's related to this concept. Says the Maharal, a very interesting idea. He says that Lot gained a connection to Avraham Avinu, tziruf ve'yuchut la'Avraham, says the Maharal. When Lot kept quiet and didn't answer the Mitzrayim by saying this is not his sister but his wife. He didn't say that. Lot became connected to Avraham. Tziruf ve'yichut la'Avraham. That's the lashon of the Maharal. Says the Maharal, says Rabbi Menachem Weinberg, he says, Talmud Rebbe says as follows. He said, what does it mean a connection to Avraham? He was already related to Avraham Avinu. It's his nephew. It's his wife's brother. He's related already. So what does it mean now? He's tziruf ve'yichut la'Avraham. So he says, the Talmud Rebbe, he says as follows. He says, who was Avraham Avinu? The Mishnah and Avot says that anyone who has these three qualities is a student of Avraham Avinu. What are the three qualities? He has a good eye, a humble spirit, and nefesh shefela. Right? I mean, how do you translate nefesh shefela? He's humble. Right? Lowly spirit. Okay. So let's see. What does this mean? First of all, says Talmud Rebbe, a good eye. He says nobody has a good eye when they're born. Everybody is born, and their eye is, I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it. But Avraham Avinu was somebody who worked on his eyesight, Vayar, he saw for someone else, understand what they need, and said, I'm not living for myself. Ayin Tov. He sees someone else. That's Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was born with the ego, like every other person. But he worked on himself. Until he became humble. Until he became a nefesh shefela. Says the Talmud Rebbe, How did Lot become connected to Abraham? Abraham worked on himself. He changed himself. When Lot didn't answer, and he was tempted to say it, and he didn't, and he saved Abraham, he conquered one midah. He changed one negative trait in himself. And it's that negative trait that led him to being saved. And says the Talmud Rebbe, now this is already way beyond me, but I'm just going to mention it because I found it interesting and intriguing. He brings from the Mekubalim that say that when Lot's neshama came back in a Gilgul, do you know whose Gilgul he was? He came back as Yehuda. It says Lot was Yehuda. Yehuda was Lot. It says Yehuda who continued to mitaken this midah of Lot. When Tamar was brought, and they said, she's your daughter-in-law, she did this and this sin, and she said, if you recognize this, what do Yehuda say? She's right, it's for me. He was model emet. He took it upon himself. He conquered his midah. He could have kept quiet and let her get burned. But at that point, he said the truth. And he says, you know what else the Talmud Rebbe says? You know, Lot came back as Yehuda, but you know he came back after Yehuda as? Came back as Boaz. What was Boaz? Boaz, Ruth shows up in the middle of the night. And he could have sinned with her. She said, he could have come up with etzot. And Boaz held himself back and didn't sin with her. And that continued the tikkun of Lot. Okay, this is already beyond us. It's already Googling and stuff. But it's interesting to note how this tikkun midot of Lot applies. And that's why Lot's children is who the line of David come from. That's how far it goes. Okay, Rabotai, let's move on to our last and final lesson on this week's Parshat. And this is a very apropos lesson. At this time, we always need shalom and we always need bracha. But if there's any time that we need it more, is right now. Says the Mishnah in Masechet Oktzin, "En kelim ma'asik bracha Yisrael, ela hashalom." There is no keli, no vessel that can hold blessing except for the keli, for the vessel of peace. When you have peace, when you have shalom, you have achdut, then you can have beracha. Who doesn't want beracha? Everybody wants beracha. So the question is, we have to get the keli of shalom. How do we get the keli of shalom? How do you get the vessel of peace? So here in the Etz Chaim, he writes, how do you do this? You have to first let go. You have to be mohel. You have to be mohel people. You can't hold a grudge. You have to start to forgive. Rabbi Shaul Salanter, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, was once traveling and someone was very mean to him and someone was very nasty to him. And when that guy found out he was Shaul Salanter, he came and he apologized. And Shaul Salanter said, I forgive you, but not only do I forgive you, tell me what I can do to help you. So the man said, why would you want to help me? Says Shaul Salanter, because if I really mochel you, then I would help you. So I want to help you to be really mochel you. We have to go that step to get shalom in order to get beracham. There was once a Talmid Chacham, and someone embarrassed him greatly in shul. And after about a week, this man came over and he apologized. And his Talmid Chacham was not ready to forgive him. And he came home and he told his wife. And his wife said, I'll tell you what to do, she says to him. You should forgive him. But I'll tell you what to do, she says. When you come up to the next time you pray Shmona Esrei, and you say, Salah lanu avinu ki hatanu, You tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it was very hard for you to forgive this man, but you forgave him. And the same way that you forgave him, Hashem should forgive you. Because if you don't forgive someone, Hashem says, why should I forgive you? And who can say they haven't sinned in front of God? So the first thing we have to do is we have to forgive others. Rav Moshe Aaron Stern, Zecher Tzedek Bracha, he says it was a tzaddik that was nifter, and when they were going through his possessions, they found a notebook, and in the notebook, this man writes that today someone greatly embarrassed me, and I have trouble being mochel him, but I'm going to try. And in the book he writes that in order to be mochel him, I have to see him as a nice guy, and in order to do that, from now on, every night I'm going to write 2 good things about this guy. And he has a whole diary, day after day. He writes about this guy who embarrassed me and why he's good. And after about a month, he writes, now I feel that I can actually be mohel him because I know what a great tzaddik he is. To be mohel someone else. Rabotai, in this week's parasha, Avraham Avinu, Ish Chesed, a man who gets so much beracha. How does he get it? Says the Ben Yehoyada. Avraham Avinu has his wife snatched away from him again in this week's parsha. Avimelech, Melech Gerar, takes Sarah. And he finds out, Hashem speaks to Avimelech, tells him this is not his sister, it's actually his wife. And Hashem tells Avimelech that Abraham will come, and you'll know he's a Navi, he'll daven for you, and you'll feel better, right? Because he closed up everybody's organs, they couldn't do anything. So, Pasuk says, Vayitpalel Abraham el Elohim, Vayarpeh Elohim et Avimelech ve'et ishto, v'amotav ve'yelado. And everybody, Abraham davened for everybody, the whole household, not just for Avimelech. Says the Ben Yehoyada, why did Abraham daven for everyone? In the Psukim, all it says, Hashem told Avimelech, Abraham is going to daven for you. So the Ben Ishchai asks, why did Abraham daven for the whole household? Hashem only told Avimelech to daven, Abraham will daven for him. Says the Ben Yehoyada. Says the Ben Yehoyada what? Avram did extra and daven from all of them because Abraham wanted to show that he was mochel legamre, that he completely forgave Avimelech for what he did. And in order to show that he forgave Avimelech completely, he prayed for the whole household. The greatness of Abraham Avinu. It's very hard. But at the same time, you see this. Even now, we're in a huge sakana with the war. And we're ready to go and fight and do what we have to do. But at the same time, we're thinking, how are we going to be further? We have to figure out a way to live in this world. A way to make, if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible. But if it is possible, we want shalom, we want peace. We've wanted it for the longest time. In 48, in 67, throughout the 90s and the thousands. We'll finish with one last story. During the COVID pandemic, a Hatan and Kala were going to get married in Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. And right after the chuppah, the police arrived, shut down the whole Yeshiva, and they took the Hatan and Kala and the Kala's father, all of them down to the police station to 3 o'clock in the morning. You can imagine what type of wedding that is. Right? Instead of going home, you're in the police station, the whole wedding was canceled. A few months later, the father of the Kala gets a phone call. The boy begins to tell him that, that wedding you had a couple of months ago, the whole thing, the whole police coming, it's actually all my fault. He says, I was reading the news, and I was so scared about COVID, And I felt that what you guys were doing was wrong. So I wanted the police to come and, enforce the law just to, everyone should be safe. I didn't expect them to shut it down and to take you away. I'm so sorry. I'm asking for mehila. His father says, why are you calling me now? He says, well, I've been trying to go on a shidduch date and I can't get one date. And I realize that's because I must have caused so much tsar, so much pain to the hatan and kala, so I'm calling to ask for forgiveness. So the father of the kala says, listen, I can forgive you, but you got to talk to the hatan and kala. There's just nothing I can do for you. You got to ask them for mehila. I forgive you. So he says, please give me the number. He gives the number to his son-in-law. And he calls the hatan and he says the same story. And the hatan says, I have to talk to my wife. And he talks to his wife and his wife says, I don't know if I'm ready to forgive. This is supposed to be my wedding day. Every girl's dream to be a kala, to get married. Already getting married during COVID and having all those other. And she says, and everything was ruined. I don't know if I could be mohel. He calls back this young man and tells him, my wife's not ready. He begged, he cried. The hatan came back to his wife. They went to a certain rav and they explained the greatness of being mochel, to having shalom, to getting bracha. And finally, the kala agreed. And they both were mochel. A few weeks after this young couple was mochel, this man, the couple was in a terrible car accident. The medics who arrived on the scene didn't expect anyone to survive the accident. True story. Yet to their shock, they saw the young couple healthy and fine on the side of the road. They crawled out of a car window without any harm. Says the Rav Biderman who shared this story, Hashem gave this couple the zchut of being mochel, and ultimately they became the receivers of the biggest bracha, the bracha of Chaim, of living, because they were mochel. In fact, the Gemara Megillah says a segula for long life is to be mochel others. And that's why in our Kriyat Shema Lamita, in there we have an usach to say that we're mochel everyone. Why? Because it's segula for life. You want to go to sleep, you want to wake back up. You need a segula, you need a lucky charm to get back up in the morning. It's by being mochel people, you get the zchut of Chaim. Perhaps. That's why when it comes Yom Kippur, we say Yom Kippur is mechaper avanot between ben adam and makom, between man and Hashem, but not between man and his fellow man. So therefore, what do we suggest we do? To ask everybody for mehila. Why? Chaim mivamet. Life and death is in right now in Yom Kippur. Hashanah, it's you're writing down which book you're going into. You want to segula for life? You got to start being mohel people. That's why. We don't have to wait for Yom Kippur and Shana to be mochel people. We can start being mochel people right now. If you have any grudges from the past, have any grudges now, any tightness in anybody, now is the time to be mochel. We need bracha. We need shalom. And the way to get that is to be mochel. So, to wrap up and review the 3 lessons that we have in this week's Parsha, our first lesson was to be a Vayera person, to see someone and not just see them, but to understand what you're seeing in order to be able to help them. Lesson number 2, don't be lot. Don't be an enigma. Don't let your midot ra'ot survive. Va'aseh tov. Change your midot ra'ot to midot tovot. And then you'll be zochet to a lot. And our third and final lesson, to get shalom, to get bracha, in order to have Chaim. Ezrat Hashem, we should all see only good. We see the Gula Shema B'Her B'Yameinu. Amen. Shabbat Shalom Lekulam.